In the last video, we saw how the king of the south, Egypt, is a succession of kings from the line of Ptolemy, and the king of the north, Syria, is a succession of kings from the line of Seleucus, which arose out of the Grecian Empire. In this video, we will look at why we need to know about the king of the south and the king of the north. Daniel chapter 11 verses 5 to 20 provides a remarkable prophecy giving continuous events of the conflicts between the king of the north and the king of the south, that is, Syria and Egypt, which took place after the death of Alexander the Great. The exact interpretation of these verses is quite difficult to determine because expositors need to turn to so much history in order to correspond the prophecy with the possible fulfillment. However, there is a general agreement on the major events of the conflicts between the king of the north and the king of the south. Why was Daniel given so much information about the king of the south and the king of the north? That is because chapter 11 provides greater insight into the vision of Daniel chapter 8, the vision of the ram and the goat. In chapter 8, we were told plainly that the ram which that is Daniel, saw, having two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the foal that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. These are the 4 kingdoms that arose out of Alexander's 4 generals. We also read in Daniel chapter 8 verse 9 that out of one of them, out of the 4 kingdoms, came a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and toward the glorious land. Likewise, we have already seen how Daniel chapter 11 also shows that the kingdom of Greece will be broken up into 4, but then moves on to emphasize on 2, namely the king of the south and the king of the north. It is out of the king of the north, also known as the Seleucid Empire, or Syria, that a vile person would arise. A careful read of verses 15 to 21 tells us so, showing us the succession of the kings of the north. Verse 15 begins with the king of the north. Verses 16 to 19 tell us the things he does. Verse 20 goes on to say that in place of the king of the north, another king shall arise who will impose taxes on the glorious land. And verse 21 tells us that in his place arises a vile person who would seize the kingdom by intrigue. So in Daniel 8, we know that a little horn will come out of one of the 4 horns. And now, Daniel chapter 11 tells us exactly which of the 4 horns the little horn comes out of. It is out of Syria, the king of the north, the Seleucid Empire. In other words, the vile person of chapter 11 is the little horn of chapter 8. When we look at history, it is agreed by many that the fulfillment of the vile person of chapter 11 and the little horn of chapter 8 are seen in the person of Antiochus Epiphanes of the Syrian kingdom, the king of the north. The little horn in Daniel 8 is described as one who, number 1, cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground, apostasy. Number 2, cast down the place of God's sanctuary. Number 3, takes away and opposes the daily sacrifices. And number 4, casts truth to the ground, the transgression of desolation. The vile person in Daniel chapter 11, verses 31 to 32, is described as one who, number 1, does wickedly against the covenant, the Jews, and corrupts with flattery, the apostasy of the Jews. Number 2, defiles the sanctuary fortress. Number 3, takes away the daily sacrifices. And number 4, places the abomination of desolation. It is Antiochus Epiphanes, the king of the north, who came from the Seleucid Empire, or Syria, that forbade the burnt offerings and sacrifices, profaned the Sabbath and festivals, defiled the sanctuary and the priest, and had swine and other unclean animals sacrificed. He arrogantly entered the sanctuary and took the furniture and the utensils of the temple into his own land. He placed an image of Jupiter Olympus, a Roman god, in the Holy of Holies, and this was the abomination of desolation in the sight of God and the faithful Jews. He shed much blood, tore to pieces, and burnt the books of the law that were found, and made a decree that those who would not adhere to his laws would be put to death. He caused many Jews to forsake their faith and to sacrifice idols and to profane the Sabbath. We can now understand why Antiochus Epiphanes is generally agreed to be the little horn of Daniel chapter 8 and the vile person of chapter 11. In summary, Antiochus Epiphanes was the king of the Seleucid Empire who ruled over Syria. The Seleucid Empire came out of one of the four kingdoms that arose out of the kingdom of Greece. As such, he is seen as one of the kings of the north. He defiled the sanctuary of God and took away the daily sacrifices. He was a ruthless ruler who persecuted the Jews, leading many to apostasy. Although Antiochus Epiphanes historically fulfills these prophecies in part, he is but a type of the end times Antichrist. The key in understanding this is the time element mentioned throughout the book of Daniel, in line with the book of Revelation. This will make even more sense when we look at Daniel chapter 12, bringing all the pieces of the puzzle together. It is therefore crucial to keep in view the historical fulfillment, the time element, and the prophecies given to Daniel in the light of the book of Revelation, the things Jesus said in the Gospels, and the epistles of the New Testament. When all the parts of the puzzle are laid out and brought in together, we start to see the big picture. As we go from chapter to chapter, the progressive revelation in relation to the world kingdoms given to Daniel becomes clearer and clearer, moving from historical fulfillment to prophetic events relating to the end times.